I should have known something was wrong when Julia started using heart emojis with her boss. My wife had never been the emoji type. Too professional, too focused on climbing that corporate ladder one rung at a time. But there they were, glowing on her phone screen at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 red hearts followed by, "Can't wait for the conference, Eric." My name is Matt Foster, and I'm about to tell you how a marketing conference in Boston turned me into the kind of man I never thought I'd become. The kind who destroys lives methodically, carefully, and with a smile. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with that Tuesday night in our suburban Massachusetts home, where everything looked normal from the outside. White picket fence, 2-car garage, neighbors who waved and minded their own business. Julia and I had built what everyone called the perfect life. She was the ambitious marketing executive at Hartwell & Associates. I was the IT specialist who kept their servers running and their data secure. "Who's texting you this late?" I asked, looking up from my laptop where I'd been troubleshooting a network issue. Julia's fingers moved quickly across her screen. "Just work stuff. You know how it is." I did know how it was. Julia lived and breathed her job, had since the day she started there 3 years ago, but heart emojis for work stuff? That was new. "Must be some important work stuff," I said, keeping my voice light. "Eric Shaw, right? Your boss?" She looked up sharply. "Were you reading my texts? Hard to miss when you are sitting right next to me and your screen's brighter than a lighthouse." Julia's laugh sounded forced. "Sorry, I didn't realize." "Yeah, it's Eric. We have this big conference coming up in Boston. 3 days, all the regional managers will be there. It's a huge opportunity for me." I nodded and went back to my laptop, but something cold had settled in my stomach. In 8 years of marriage, Julia had never been secretive about work. She'd tell me about every meeting, every presentation, every office drama in excruciating detail. Now she was guarding her phone like it contained state secrets. Over the next 2 weeks, the signs multiplied. New perfume, expensive stuff that made our bedroom smell like a department store. Late nights at the office became routine. She started working out again, something she hadn't done since our honeymoon. And the clothes, Julia had always dressed professionally, but now she was buying outfits that cost more than my monthly car payment. "You look great," I told her one morning as she modeled a new dress in our bedroom mirror. "Special occasion? Just want to look my best for the conference. First impressions matter, you know?" The conference. Everything was about the conference now. She'd mentioned it 17 times in the past week. I'd started counting. The night before she left, I found the hotel confirmation email in our shared account. The Marriott Copley Place, Boston. Premium suite. 2 beds, the reservation said, but something about it felt wrong. Maybe it was the way Julia had been humming while she packed, or how she'd bought new lingerie. The expensive kind that definitely wasn't meant for sleeping alone in a hotel room. "I'll miss you," I said as she zipped up her suitcase. "It's only 3 days, Matt. I'll be back before you know it." She kissed me goodbye the next morning, but it felt like a performance, like she was playing the role of loving wife one last time before the curtain fell. I went to work, fixed servers, answered help desk tickets, and pretended everything was normal. But when I got home that evening, the house felt different, empty in a way that had nothing to do with Julia being gone. I opened a beer, sat in my home office, and did something I'd never done before. I logged into our cell phone account and pulled up Julia's text messages. What I found there changed everything. Eric Shaw wasn't just her boss. He was her baby, her handsome, her can't wait to hold you. The messages went back months, flirty texts that escalated into explicit planning for their Boston getaway. They'd been careful, mostly, but not careful enough. Not when your husband has administrative access to every digital account in the house. I sat there reading message after message, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. The conference was a lie. The whole thing was an elaborate cover story for a romantic weekend with her boss. 3 days in a premium suite, room service, and whatever else married people do when they're not married to each other. My hands were shaking when I closed the laptop. 8 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? With heart emojis and hotel reservations? But then I found something else. Something that made me realize this wasn't just about an affair. Hidden in Eric's messages to Julia was a conversation about money. Big money. Company money that was being moved around in ways that didn't sound entirely legal. Eric was skimming from expense accounts, inflating conference budgets, and using company credit cards for personal purchases. He was stealing, and Julia knew about it. More than that, she was helping him cover it up. I leaned back in my chair and started to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was perfect. My cheating wife and her thieving boss had just handed me the keys to their destruction. I picked up my phone and called my best friend Nate. Nate Rodriguez. No, wait, that's not right. Nate Sullivan. He'd been a private investigator for 5 years, ever since he got tired of being a cop and decided he could make more money catching cheating spouses and insurance fraudsters. "Matt? What's up, man? You sound weird." I need your help with something, I said. How good are you at digging up financial records? Depends on what kind of records. Why? Because I think my wife's boss is embezzling from his company, and I want to make sure he gets caught. There was a pause. Matt, what's going on? I told him everything. The texts, the conference, the money trail I'd stumbled across. Nate listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You sure you want to go down this road? He asked finally. Once you start digging into this stuff, there's no going back. I'm sure, I said. And I was. Julia had made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage and help her boyfriend steal from his company. Now, I was going to make mine. All right, Nate said. Give me everything you've got on this Eric Shaw. Let's see what kind of man your wife's been sleeping with. As I gathered the evidence, forwarding screenshots and account numbers to Nate, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. For the first time since I'd discovered Julia's affair, I wasn't just reacting. I was planning. The conference that was supposed to destroy my marriage was about to become the conference that destroyed theirs instead. Nate called me back at 7 a.m. the next morning, which meant he'd been up all night digging into Eric Shaw's life. When Nate got his teeth into something, he didn't let go. Matt, you sitting down? I'm eating cereal and trying to pretend my life isn't falling apart. What did you find? Your wife's boyfriend is a piece of work. Eric Shaw, 42, married to Rachel Shaw for 15 years, 2 kids in private school. On paper, he looks like the perfect corporate executive. In reality, he's been stealing from Hartwell and Associates for at least 2 years. I set down my spoon. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate. Somewhere around $200,000. He's been inflating conference budgets, billing personal expenses to fake client accounts, and skimming cash from the company's entertainment fund. The guy's got a gambling problem. I found records of him losing big at Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. Your wife's affair isn't just about romance, Matt. She's his accomplice. The cereal turned to cardboard in my mouth. You're sure? Julia's been helping him create fake invoices and covering for his absences when he's at the casinos. She's not just sleeping with him, she's helping him steal. If this comes out, she's going to prison right alongside him. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Opportunity. Nate, I need you to document everything. Every transaction, every fake invoice, every casino visit. I want a complete record of what they've been doing. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve. After Nate hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the woman I'd married. Julia had always been ambitious, but I'd never thought she was dishonest. Apparently, I'd been wrong about a lot of things. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Conference is going great. Miss you? The hypocrisy was staggering. She was probably texting me from Eric's hotel bed, pretending to be at some marketing seminar while helping her boyfriend spend stolen money. I texted back, Miss you too. Can't wait to hear all about it when you get home. 2 could play the lying game. I took the day off work and drove to Boston. If Julia and Eric wanted to have their romantic getaway, they were going to have an audience. The Marriott Copley Place was exactly the kind of upscale hotel Eric would choose for his stolen money weekend. I parked across the street and waited. At 2:30 p.m., I saw them walking hand in hand through the lobby like they didn't have a care in the world. Julia was wearing the new dress, the expensive one she'd claimed was for making first impressions. Eric was in a suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. I followed them to the hotel bar, staying far enough back to avoid being seen. They were all over each other, touching hands, whispering, laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny. Julia looked happier than I'd seen her in months. Apparently, betraying your husband and stealing from your employer was good for the complexion. I took out my phone and started recording. Video evidence of their affair would be useful, but I wanted more than that. I wanted to destroy them both so completely that they'd never recover. They finished their drinks and headed for the elevators. I watched the numbers climb. 7th floor, room 734, according to the hotel records I'd hacked earlier. Yes, I'd used my IT skills to access the hotel's reservation system. Sue me. I waited in the lobby for 3 hours. When they finally came down for dinner, Julia had changed into the new lingerie under a silk dress that left nothing to the imagination. They were celebrating something, probably the success of their theft and lies. I followed them to the restaurant and took a table where I could watch them without being seen. They ordered the most expensive items on the menu, drank wine that cost more per bottle than most people spent on groceries in a week. All of it paid for with stolen money. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't just going to expose their affair and their crimes. I was going to make sure everyone knew what kind of people they really were. Julia's friends, her family, her co-workers, they were all going to see the real Julia Foster. I drove home that night and started planning. The first step was to contact Eric's wife. Rachel Shaw answered her phone on the 3rd ring. Hello? Mrs. Shaw, you don't know me, but I have some information about your husband that I think you need to see. Who is this? My name is Matt Foster. My wife works for your husband. They're currently in Boston together, and I have video evidence of them having an affair. The silence stretched for so long, I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke. Send me everything. I did. Every text message, every photo, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Rachel Shaw was about to become my ally in ways Eric and Julia couldn't imagine. The next morning, I got a call from Julia's mother, Margaret Cranston. Margaret had never liked me. I wasn't successful enough, ambitious enough, good enough for her precious daughter. Matthew, I just spoke with Julia. She says you've been acting paranoid and jealous lately. Is that what she says? She's concerned about your mental state. Perhaps you should consider counseling. I almost laughed. Julia was covering her bases, setting up a narrative where I was the unstable husband who couldn't handle his wife's success. Too bad for her that I had evidence of everything. Margaret, did Julia mention that she's helping her boss steal money from their company? That's a serious accusation, Matthew. I hope you have proof. I have more proof than you can imagine. And when this all comes out, you're going to realize that your daughter isn't the person you think she is. I hung up before she could respond. Let Margaret defend Julia all she wanted. In 48 hours, everyone would know the truth. My sister Leah called that afternoon. Unlike Margaret, Leah had always been on my side. Matt, Mom told me about Julia. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm about to become the kind of person who fights back. What does that mean? It means Julia and her boyfriend are about to learn that actions have consequences. Leah was quiet for a moment. Just be careful, okay? Don't do anything stupid. I won't do anything stupid, I promised. But I'm definitely going to do something they'll never forget. That evening, I got another text from Julia. Last night of the conference. Learned so much. Can't wait to implement new strategies at work. The only strategy Julia was implementing was how to steal money and cheat on her husband without getting caught. Unfortunately for her, she wasn't as smart as she thought she was. I texted back, sounds exciting. See you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, when Julia came home with her lies and her fake stories about marketing seminars, I'd be ready for her. But first, I had some phone calls to make and some evidence to distribute. Eric Shaw's world was about to collapse, and he didn't even know it yet. Julia came home Sunday evening glowing with what she probably thought was the afterglow of a successful conference. She kissed me at the door, another performance, and started unpacking while telling me elaborate lies about keynote speakers and networking opportunities. The session on digital marketing trends was incredible, she said, hanging up the dress she'd worn to dinner with Eric. And the networking opportunities were amazing. I made so many valuable connections. Sounds like it was worth the trip, I said, watching her carefully fold the lingerie she'd worn for another man. Definitely. I think this could really boost my career. If by boost her career she meant destroy it completely along with her marriage and her freedom, then she was absolutely right. Monday morning, Julia went to work like nothing had happened. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and drove off to face what she didn't know would be the worst day of her professional life. I waited until 9 a.m., then called Hartwell and Associates and asked to speak with the company president, David Hartwell. Mr. Hartwell, my name is Matt Foster. I'm Julia Foster's husband, and I have some information about financial irregularities in your company that I think you need to see. What kind of irregularities? The kind that involve Eric Shaw stealing approximately $200,000 over the past 2 years, with my wife's help. There was a long pause. That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Foster. I have documentation, bank records, text messages, hotel receipts paid for with company credit cards. Would you like me to send them to you? Please do. Send everything to my personal email address. I spent the next hour forwarding evidence to David Hartwell. Every fake invoice, every fraudulent expense report, every text message where Julia and Eric discussed covering their tracks. By the time I finished, there was no doubt about what they'd been doing. At 11:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was Nate. Matt, something's happening at Julia's office. I've got a contact there who says there are auditors in the building, and Eric Shaw just got escorted out by security. Already? Hartwell doesn't mess around when it comes to theft. Word is they've frozen Eric's accounts and called the police. Julia's in a meeting with HR right now. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Something terrible has happened at work. Eric's been fired. Can't talk now. I texted back, sorry to hear that. Hope everything works out. The hypocrisy was delicious. Julia was probably panicking, wondering if her role in Eric's crimes would be discovered. She had no idea that her husband had already made sure of it. At 2 p.m., Rachel Shaw called me. Matt, I wanted to thank you. I confronted Eric last night with the evidence you sent me. He broke down and confessed everything, the affair, the stealing, all of it. How are you holding up? I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says I can protect myself and the kids from his financial crimes if I act quickly. I'm also going to make sure everyone knows what kind of man he really is. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to tell everyone we know about his affair with your wife and his theft from the company. His reputation is going to be destroyed, and frankly, he deserves it. Rachel Shaw was proving to be an even better ally than I'd hoped. Eric wasn't just losing his job and his freedom, he was about to lose his entire social circle. Julia came home that evening looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her makeup was smeared, her hair was disheveled, and her hands were shaking. Matt, something awful has happened. Eric's been accused of stealing from the company. They think I might have been involved. Were you involved? She looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. Of course not. I had no idea what he was doing. But HR is investigating everyone who worked closely with him. I'm scared I might lose my job. The lies came so easily to her. Even now, with her world collapsing around her, she was still trying to deceive me. I'm sure if you're innocent, you have nothing to worry about, I said. But what if they don't believe me? What if they think I knew about the stealing? Did you know about it? No. The word came out too quickly, too forcefully. I told you, I had no idea. I nodded sympathetically. Then you'll be fine. The truth always comes out. Julia spent the evening pacing around the house, checking her phone constantly, jumping every time it rang. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and she didn't have to wait long. Tuesday morning, she got the call from HR asking her to come in for another meeting. This time, they had lawyers present. They want me to bring a lawyer, too, she told me, her voice barely above a whisper. Matt, I think they're going to fire me. Maybe you should call in sick, I suggested. Give yourself time to think. I can't. That would make me look guilty. She was right about that. But she was guilty, and looking guilty was the least of her problems. Julia left for work, wearing her most conservative suit, like professional clothing could somehow protect her from the consequences of her actions. I kissed her goodbye and wished her luck, playing the supportive husband role one last time. At 10 a.m., Nate called with an update. Julia just got fired. Security escorted her out of the building with a box of her personal belongings. Word is they have evidence of her involvement in Eric's schemes, and they are considering pressing charges. Criminal charges? That's what my contact says. Apparently, Julia helped Eric create fake invoices for a client that doesn't exist. They have her signature on documents authorizing payments to shell companies. She's in deep trouble, Matt. I should have felt sorry for her. Instead, I felt vindicated. Julia had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. She came home at noon, carrying a cardboard box, and looking like her world had ended, because it had. They fired me, she said, setting the box down in our entryway. They think I helped Eric steal money from the company. Did you? Matt, how can you even ask me that? Because you've been lying to me for months about your relationship with Eric. If you'll lie about having an affair, why wouldn't you lie about helping him steal? Julia's face went white. What are you talking about? I know about Boston, Julia. I know about the hotel, the romantic dinners, all of it. I know you've been sleeping with Eric Shaw. She started to deny it, but something in my expression stopped her. Maybe she realized that the time for lies had passed. How long have you known? Long enough to make sure everyone else knows too. What does that mean? I smiled at her, and for the first time in our marriage, it wasn't a kind smile. It means your affair and your crimes are about to become public knowledge. It means everyone you know, your friends, your family, your former coworkers, is going to find out exactly what kind of person you really are. Julia stared at me in horror. Matt, you wouldn't... I already have. That's when she realized that her husband wasn't the pushover she'd thought he was. That's when she realized that the conference that was supposed to be her romantic getaway had become the beginning of her complete destruction. And I was just getting started. The next morning, Julia's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Her friends had seen the news about Eric Shaw's arrest. Yes, he'd been arrested overnight for embezzlement, and they wanted details. Julia tried to play innocent, claiming she had no idea about Eric's crimes, but her friends weren't stupid. They'd seen how close she was to Eric, how much time they spent together. Sarah just asked me if I was sleeping with Eric. Julia told me after hanging up from her third call of the morning. Why would she think that? Maybe because you were sleeping with Eric? Julia's face crumpled. Matt, please. I made a mistake. I was confused, and Eric was so charming, and he made me feel important. But it's over now. We can work through this. Work through what? Your affair? Your involvement in stealing $200,000? Your lies? I never stole anything. I pulled out my laptop and showed her the evidence Nate had compiled. Bank records, text messages, invoices with her signature authorizing payments to fake companies. Julia's face went from pale to green as she realized how much I knew. You've been investigating me? I've been protecting myself. Did you really think you could steal money, cheat on your husband, and face no consequences? Matt, I love you. I made mistakes, but I love you. You love me? Is that why you were planning to leave me for Eric? Julia's eyes widened. What? I showed her more text messages. Ones where she and Eric discussed their future together, plans to divorce their spouses, move to Florida, start a new life with their stolen money. Julia had been ready to destroy our marriage and disappear with her criminal boyfriend. Those messages, they were just fantasies. We weren't really going to do it. The bank account you opened in Florida says otherwise. The one with $50,000 that you and Eric were planning to use for your new life together. Julia sat down heavily on our couch. How do you know about that? Because I know everything, Julia. Every lie, every crime, every betrayal, and now everyone else is going to know too. My phone rang. It was Margaret Cranston, Julia's mother. Matthew, I just heard about Julia losing her job. What's going on? Your daughter has been having an affair with her boss and helping him steal money from their company. She's probably going to be arrested. That's impossible. Julia would never do such things. Check your email, Margaret. I sent you proof. I hung up and turned to Julia, who was staring at me in horror. You sent evidence to my mother? I sent evidence to everyone who matters. Your mother, your sister, your friends, your former coworkers. By the end of the day, everyone in your life will know exactly what you've done. Julia's phone started ringing again. This time it was her sister Amy. Don't answer it, I suggested. You're going to have a lot of difficult conversations today. But Julia did answer, and I listened to her try to explain away her crimes and her affair. Amy wasn't buying it. Neither were the other friends and family members who called throughout the morning. The evidence was too overwhelming, the betrayal too complete. At noon, my sister Leah called. Matt, I just saw the news about Julia's boss getting arrested. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm finally free. What are you going to do now? I'm going to make sure Julia faces consequences for what she's done. Real consequences. That afternoon, local news picked up the story. Marketing executive arrested for embezzlement was the headline, with Eric Shaw's photo prominently displayed. The article mentioned that a female employee was also under investigation for her role in the scheme, though they didn't name Julia yet. But they would. I'd made sure of that by sending the evidence to the reporter who wrote the story. Julia spent the day fielding phone calls from reporters, lawyers, and former friends who wanted to know if the rumors were true. She tried to maintain her innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. Matt, you have to help me, she begged that evening. I need a lawyer. I need character witnesses. I need someone to believe in me. Why would I help you? You betrayed me in every way possible. Because you're my husband. Because we took vows. For better or worse, remember? I remember. But apparently you forgot when you decided to sleep with Eric Shaw and help him steal money. Julia started crying then, real tears of desperation and fear. But I felt nothing. She'd burned through my sympathy months ago with her lies and betrayal. The next morning brought more bad news for Julia. The local newspaper ran a follow-up story that named her as Eric's accomplice. Her photo was right there on the front page, looking guilty and desperate. The headline read, "Local woman implicated in embezzlement scheme." Julia's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting interviews, former friends wanting explanations, lawyers offering their services. She ignored most of the calls, but she couldn't ignore the knock on our door at 10 a.m. It was Detective Maria Santos from the Financial Crimes Unit. Julia Foster, I have a warrant for your arrest. I watched from our living room window as my wife was handcuffed and put into the back of a police car. The neighbors were watching too, whispering among themselves, taking pictures with their phones. By evening, those pictures would be all over social media. Julia's arrest made the evening news. The reporter stood in front of our house and described how a trusted employee had helped her boss steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from their company. They showed Julia's perp walk, her face hidden behind her hands as she was led to the police car. My phone rang. It was Margaret Cranston. Matthew, you have to help Julia. She's been arrested. I know. I watched it happen. She needs bail money. She needs a lawyer. She needs her family to support her. She should have thought about that before she decided to become a criminal. She made mistakes, but she's still my daughter. And she's still your wife. Not for long. I hung up and called a divorce lawyer. It was time to make the separation official. That evening, I sat in my quiet house and thought about how much my life had changed in just 1 week. 7 days ago, I'd been a naive husband who trusted his wife. Now, I was a man who'd systematically destroyed the people who'd betrayed him. And I wasn't done yet. Julia would make bail eventually. Her mother would see to that. But her reputation was ruined, her career was over, and her criminal trial would keep her in the headlines for months. Eric Shaw was facing 10 years in prison and had lost everything: his job, his wife, his kids, his freedom. They'd thought they were so smart, stealing money and conducting their affair right under everyone's noses. They'd underestimated the quiet IT guy who fixed their computers and kept their secrets. That had been their biggest mistake. Julia made bail after 3 days in county lockup, thanks to her mother mortgaging her house. She came home looking like a different person, hollow-eyed, defeated, wearing the same clothes she'd been arrested in. The confident, ambitious woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who jumped at every sound and flinched when the phone rang. "Matt, we need to talk," she said, setting down the plastic bag containing her personal effects from jail. "I don't think we do. Please, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but I need to explain." "Explain what?" "How you decided to cheat on me, how you decided to help Eric steal money, how you planned to divorce me and run away to Florida with your stolen cash." Julia winced. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I have the evidence, remember?" She sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 8 years, where we'd planned our future and talked about having children someday. Now it felt like a courtroom. "I was going to leave Eric," she said quietly. "After the conference, I was going to end it and try to save our marriage." "That's interesting, because your text messages say something different." "They say you were planning to file for divorce and claim I was abusive so you could get a better settlement." Julia's face went white. "You saw those messages?" "I saw everything. Every lie, every plan, every cruel thing you said about me to your criminal boyfriend. The truth was even worse than I'd initially discovered. In her messages to Eric, Julia hadn't just planned to leave me, she'd planned to destroy me. She was going to claim I was emotionally abusive, that I'd threatened her, that she feared for her safety. It would have ruined my reputation and given her a financial advantage in the divorce." "Matt, those were just... I was angry. I felt trapped. I never would have actually..." "Yes, you would have. You'd already started laying the groundwork. Telling your friends I was controlling, telling your mother I was paranoid. You were building a case against me." Julia started crying, but I felt nothing. She'd cried in jail too, according to the news reports. Crocodile tears from a woman who'd planned to frame her husband for abuse while stealing money with her boyfriend. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Nothing. I want nothing from you." "Matt, please. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll testify against Eric. I'll pay back every penny. You'll go to prison. That's what you'll do." My phone rang. It was Nate. "Matt, you need to turn on Channel 7. There's something you need to see." I grabbed the remote and switched to the local news. The reporter was standing outside the courthouse, and Eric Shaw's mugshot was displayed prominently on the screen. In a surprising development in the Hartwell and Associates embezzlement case, Eric Shaw was found dead in his cell this morning. Sources say he appears to have taken his own life rather than face trial for stealing over $300,000 from his employer. Julia gasped. "Eric's dead?" I turned up the volume. The reporter continued, "Shaw's alleged accomplice, Julia Foster, is still facing charges related to the embezzlement scheme. Her trial is scheduled to begin next month." Julia stared at the screen in shock. "He killed himself?" Apparently, he couldn't face the consequences of his actions. But he was going to testify. He was going to explain that I didn't know about the money. I looked at her with something approaching pity. "Julia, Eric was never going to save you. He was going to throw you under the bus to reduce his own sentence. You were the expendable one." The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. With Eric dead, Julia was the sole target of the prosecution. All the evidence pointed to her involvement in the embezzlement scheme, and there was no one left to corroborate her claims of innocence. "I need a lawyer," she said, reaching for her phone. "You already have a lawyer, a public defender, since you can't afford anyone better." "My mother will help." "Your mother already mortgaged her house for your bail. She doesn't have any more money." Julia looked around our kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. "What about the house?" "We could sell the house to pay for a better lawyer." "You can't sell the house. It's not yours anymore." "What do you mean?" I pulled out a folder of legal documents. "I mean, I filed for divorce the day you were arrested. I also had you removed from all our joint accounts and took your name off the deed to the house. Legally, you own nothing." Julia stared at the documents in disbelief. "You can't do that." "I already did. My lawyer was very thorough." "But this is my home. This is the home of a woman who planned to frame her husband for abuse and steal money with her criminal boyfriend. That woman doesn't live here anymore." Julia's phone rang. It was her public defender, calling to discuss her case now that Eric was dead and couldn't testify on her behalf. I listened to her side of the conversation, watching as she realized how hopeless her situation had become. "They want me to plead guilty," she said after hanging up. "They're offering 5 years if I cooperate fully." "That seems reasonable." "Reasonable? Matt, it's 5 years in prison. It's better than the 15 you'll get if you go to trial and lose." Julia looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "When did you become so cold?" "When I found out my wife was a lying, cheating criminal who planned to destroy my life." She stood up abruptly. "I'm not going to prison. I'll fight this. I'll prove my innocence." "With what money? With what evidence? With what witnesses? I'll figure something out." Julia stormed out of the kitchen, but she had nowhere to go. Her friends had abandoned her, her family was broke, and her lover was dead. She was trapped in a house that no longer belonged to her, facing a future that included nothing but shame and imprisonment. That evening, I got a call from the prosecutor handling Julia's case. "Mr. Foster, I wanted to thank you for your cooperation in this matter. The evidence you provided was instrumental in building our case. I'm glad I could help. I also wanted to let you know that we're confident of securing a conviction. Your wife's involvement in the embezzlement scheme is well documented. After I hung up, I sat in my home office and thought about the past month. 4 weeks ago, I'd been a trusting husband who believed in his marriage. Now I was a man who'd systematically destroyed his wife's life in retaliation for her betrayal. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt satisfied. Julia had made her choices. She'd chosen to cheat, to steal, to lie, and to plan my destruction. Now she was facing the consequences of those choices. The conference that was supposed to be her romantic getaway with Eric Shaw had become the beginning of her complete downfall. She'd lost her job, her freedom, her reputation, her family's financial security, and her marriage. Soon she'd lose her liberty, too. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, Julia and me on our wedding day, young and happy and full of hope for the future. I took the photo and dropped it in the trash can. That woman was gone. The woman who'd replaced her was a criminal who deserved everything that was coming to her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Julia using a borrowed phone. "Matt, please don't let them destroy me. I'm still the woman you married." I deleted the message without responding. The woman I'd married would never have done what Julia did. The woman I'd married was dead, killed by greed and selfishness and criminal ambition. In her place was a stranger who would spend the next 5 years in prison, thinking about the conference that changed everything. Justice, I thought, had never felt so sweet. 6 months later, Julia was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison after rejecting the plea deal and losing at trial. I attended the sentencing hearing and watched as she was led away in shackles, finally facing the full consequences of her actions. As I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, I felt truly free for the first time in years. The woman who'd betrayed me was gone, the man who'd seduced her was dead, and I was finally able to start rebuilding my life. The conference that broke my marriage had ultimately made me stronger. Julia had taught me that trust had to be earned, that love without respect was meaningless, and that sometimes the only way to win was to fight back harder than your enemies expected. I got in my car and drove home to my quiet house, where no one would lie to me, cheat on me, or plan my destruction. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was an honest life. And after everything I'd been through, honesty was all I really wanted.